Hello there, this is Matt Miranda, Guadalupe County 4-H agent, and this is going to be a rather brief tutorial on the brand new record book forms for the 2018-2019 4-H year. Seniors, y'all will not see a whole lot of difference in the record book. It's still very much the same that it was for y'all. Where we're really going to see a lot of changes is with the juniors and the intermediates. So this training shouldn't take more than an hour, but we'll also be having some face-to-face trainings, one at the extension office and one out in the Shirt-Cibolo area in the month of May. Before we get started, all record books will be due to the county extension office by June 17th, 2019. That's because record book judging will be the next day, June 18th, and then the Friday of that week is going to be awards and ambassador interviews. So we'll talk more about that later on in the slideshow. The purpose and objectives of the 4-H record books, really, to me, there's one big reason why we do record books. It's the reason that I push them. And you can read some of these other ones on here, but the biggest reason is scholarships. The record book allows you to keep all of that information in one place for your entire 4-H career. If you keep copies of it, or if you keep a version of it on your computer, you always have that information of what you did when you were 8, 9, 10 years old, and you're trying to think back, what did you do over your 10-year 4-H career, or however long you've been in it. But it's a really good way to keep all that information together, and coincidentally, or maybe not coincidentally, all of that information is also very useful on other scholarship applications as well. The primary reason we do record books is to allow 4-H members to see how they've grown in themselves and their projects over time, to see what they have learned, maybe what they didn't learn or what they came up short doing, and then how to do it all creatively without really any kind of set parameters about it. It also demonstrates the importance of keeping a written document of what has been done. That's a life skill that you'll need for keeping a checkbook, or maintaining your grades, or studying, or a number of other things. Record books also help with that. It provides a written platform for goal setting and documentation. That way, if somebody says, well, what were your goals and how did you reach them, you can actually say, I did A, B, and C to get to that point. And it provides an opportunity for most of us, the last opportunity for competition at the county, district, and state level every year. Really, the steps to the record keeping process, this is something that should be started at the very beginning of the 4-H year. And we're not really talking about, oh, you have to get your record book and start filling it in as the year progresses. But the one thing that you should be doing at the beginning of every year is setting a goal, identifying something that you want to do, and plan those different steps for you to get there to do it. As you work through those objectives, those learning objectives, and head towards your goal, you need to start writing down what you did, and we call that journaling. And this is going to be an important skill to have in college and beyond. And it's sort of like, if you keep a diary, writing in the diary, but it is being able to say with some detail what you have done, and why you did it, when you did it, all those kinds of good things. A lot of people will, especially if it's animal projects, will keep a clipboard where their animal is and fill it in every time they feed, how much they feed, how many times they feed a day, what the costs of everything were. You can do that with all of your projects. Growing up, my mom kept a calendar that she would write down all of our different events on. That way we had them at the end of the year. And people have notebooks and record it on their cell phones and a number of other things. So there's a lot of ways to do the journaling part of this. And then with reflecting, you're actually able to look back and see, and that's really what we're coming down to if you started at the beginning of the year, is to sit down and see, did you meet any of those goals? What were some things that you did do or didn't do that you wanted to do this year? How did your project change? How did it grow? Maybe you started out in one project and decided that another project was a much better fit for you. So that's what we're kind of talking about when we look at goal setting, journaling, and reflecting as it relates to record keeping. So this is a new little graphic that the State 4-H office has put out that kind of talks about all the different parts of what is included in the record books. The biggest change with record books is there's not separate forms for juniors, separate for intermediates, and separate for seniors. There's all one set of forms. And within those forms, there's 4 parts of it that are included. One is the check sheet, which will be the very first page, and we'll look at that in a second. There is the personal information page that you'll have to fill out, which is name, club, and address, things of that nature. Then there is a 4-H story and photo portfolio. Intermediates and seniors have been doing this the whole time during the whole last version of the record book. Juniors, the story and photo portfolio was part of the forms priorly. So what we will be doing now is everybody's going to be making the story and photo portfolio, and we'll talk about what that is. And then finally, there are the record book forms. Now, as you can see on this graphic, juniors, intermediates, and seniors all include the check sheet, the information page. Those are things that every record book has to have. For the story and photo portfolio, you'll notice that if you've done one before, there was no minimum or there was a maximum amount of pages, but there was no minimum amount of pages. So now for a junior, the minimum amount of written text is 2 pages. Minimum is 4 pages for intermediates, and minimum of 6 pages for seniors. For photos, you have a minimum of 2 pages for juniors, 3 for intermediates, and 3 for seniors. Now you can have more than that, and if you have your photos dispersed throughout the story, that's okay too. That's why they set a maximum of 10 pages for intermediates and seniors, and 8 pages for juniors. And we'll talk a little bit about each of these project or the report form sections. One thing to note is that the story needs to be 10-point minimum font, double spaced, and then for the report forms it should be a minimum of 10-point font if you're trying to fit a lot on there. There's no maximum font. I know if you're younger you may not have as much to write, so you might want to use a size 13 or 14 font to try to take up some of that empty white space. For section 1, that's on your project experiences, you are allowed to have 2 pages max, and this is for juniors, 2 pages max on your last up to 3 years of 4-H, and you can focus on 4 projects. This is very different from the previous record book where it was 1 year, 1 project for all age ranges. For the intermediates, it's up to 4 years and up to 4 projects, and you can have 3 pages maximum for this section 1 as well. And for seniors, you can have 4 years and 4 projects and up to 4 pages. So they're actually giving you an extra page to do that. So you could do each of your 4 projects on each page, and 1 page being each year, or you can do 1 project on each page with 4 years worth of information. What's important to remember is all of this information needs to be listed by year. So it's going to be interesting with the different formats we see come out over the next couple of years. These pages are blank and don't have anything else written on them, so you get to choose. And we'll talk about each of these sections as we get to them. So this is the check sheet, and this page is going to be in the very front of your record book. It's the first thing you should see when you open up the record book, and it is a fillable Word document. So what you'll need to put is your name, county and district, your age division. So remember, 3rd grade to 5th grade is junior, 6th grade to 8th grade is intermediates, and 9th grade to 12th grade is seniors. And then you'll need to list the proper category for your record book. If you are doing a dairy goat project, you would not put dairy goat, you would just put goat. If you are doing a lamb project, instead of putting lamb, you would put sheep. It's a sheep project. And it doesn't matter if you are raising steers or heifers, they're both a beef project. On our webpage, you will find the link to the most recent updated list of record book categories. There are some changes this year. There are some that have been combined, there are others that have been renamed, and still others that have been deleted. So be sure to check that out before you make your record book in a category that may not exist anymore. Your personal information page should be the second page in your record book. And as you can see, this has all the information of how many years you've been in 4-H, the number of years in your main project, address, where you live, the name of your club. So that is not Guadalupe County 4-H. It would be the name of your actual club. So Marion, Clemens, Shooting Sports. You'd put those names down. And then the number of members in your club. If you do not know the number of members in your club, that's okay. We will look that up for you. And then you as the 4-H'er, the parent, and then myself as a county agent will have to sign the record book before it is considered complete. The 4-H story and photo portfolio is something that every 4-H'er will have to do, and it's really not as complicated as it sounds. This is typically information that is from your current year of 4-H, but if you are talking about a project that you've worked on over multiple years, then you can include some information from the past as well. Or let's say you've won the 4-H Gold Star Award before and you want to make sure people see that, well, you can put it in there, something like, well, since I had previously won the Gold Star, I wasn't able to apply for any awards, whatever you come up with. But you can include some small amount of information from past years in here. The title will always be the My 4-H record book category, story, and photo portfolio. So if your main project is leadership, the title at the top of the page should read My 4-H Leadership Story and Photo Portfolio. All stories should begin with that title. And you can, with these sections, you can change the color of the font. You can change the font type if you would like. I would not make it a unprofessional looking font like Papyrus or Comic Sans. A more professional is better. Additionally, you don't want to use extremely lightly colored font colors like pink, yellow, or very light or neon colors, as that makes it really hard for the judges to read. Darker colors and more traditional fonts are best, but you can express yourself a little bit better with this section. Keep in mind, you would not want to use a different font for the record book forms. But this story should include information about yourself, your family, and your community, when and why you decided to join 4-H, and it is okay to say, I joined 4-H because my mom made me. And this is where you will state your project goals. Keep in mind, the record book judging form has a area on the forms and on the story scorecard that mentions goals. So you need to explicitly state somewhere in your story what your main goals for each of your projects were. Okay? That is very important. That way the judges can clearly and easily see what those goals that you set for yourself were. You can also include information on how 4-H has helped you become a better leader and citizen, and what you've learned through those community service and leadership activities. So you'll have some information about your family and you and why you got started, a lot of information about your main 4-H project and some of your other 4-H projects, and then information about your biggest community service projects for the year and major leadership activities that you may have had during the year. And also talk about how being a 4-H member has helped you set goals, including those goals for your project, and develop new interests, and if it has influenced your future plans or career goals. For this 4-H story and photo portfolio, photos are very important and should reflect growth, development, and involvement in the 4-H member's career. If you are used to just changing your record book up a little bit each year and sometimes using some of those same photos, that is what we are trying to avoid. You need to take new pictures each year. You could include a picture from like your first 4-H event and your last 4-H event of that year or something like that, but the bulk of those photos should be of you in the 2018-2019 4-H year. Use photos that show the member doing things. So that's why we're always running around saying, okay, we need a photo for the record book while you're doing something. Those are the kind of photos they want to see. Photos of you learning, photos of you teaching other people, and having fun. Smile in your photos. Judges like to see that y'all can smile while you're doing work. Also, use photos that show things in your main project, your other projects, leadership, and community service. You should not include a lot of photos that show family activities, livestock auctions, UIL events, sports events, and other school non-4-H related events. This is your 4-H record book, not your FFA record book, not your UIL record book. It's your 4-H record book. So we are focusing solely on what you do in 4-H. Color photos are preferred. Black and white photos are allowed. You need sharp, clear copies of the photos. They can be pasted into the book if you would like. But the easiest way nowadays is to paste them directly into the document and print them out using a high quality printer. That way you have nice photos for the judges to see. You can also include, something new this year is you can also include newspaper clippings in your record book, but you cannot include entire newspaper articles. One of the things about the 4-H story and photo portfolio, it should help tell a story beyond what is written in your record forms. This is more of you, the judge trying to get a sense of who you are as a person. So include different new information that's what's in the forms. Expand on the entries to tell the story of your 4-H work. So if you have something, maybe you have National 4-H Congress listed in your record book forms, well, tell us what that is. Explain why it was an important event, what did you do at that event, and things like that. You are not required to put captions by your photos. If you are including photos within the story text, then you would just want to put photos somewhere close to what you are describing through the text. But if you think a photo needs a caption, go ahead and include it. The example I always use is some years ago, we had a kid that opened up his record book, and one of the first pictures you see is a little kid holding a knife covered with blood. Well, he had just helped to process his first deer, and was kind of a mess afterwards, but he was smiling about it, and so you could tell he was doing something fun, but you couldn't quite tell what was going on. So if you have a photo that you think needs a caption, go ahead and put it on there. but they are not required. The combined portfolio should be completed within the page limits. So again, for juniors, you have a maximum limit of 8 pages with minimum 2 pages of text and a minimum of 2 pages of photos. Okay, but it needs to be a minimum of, or it needs to be no more than 8 pages. With intermediates, it is a minimum 4 pages of text and minimum 3 pages of photos or equivalent of photos for a maximum of 10 total pages. And then for seniors, it is a minimum of 6 pages of text and 3 pages of photos with a maximum possible of 10 pages. Your text is to be double-spaced using a minimum 10-point font or equivalent font size. Photos may be placed throughout the story, adhering to the minimum number of equivalent pages as listed, or they can all be grouped together at the end of it. And then one big change when it comes to these record books this year is record books in the photography category will follow the same guidelines regarding numbers of photos. In the past, you were allowed to include 6 extra pages of photos. That is no longer the case. So if you would like to include some photos that you took through your photography project, those would have to be included in the 4-H story and photo portfolio. So the Texas 4-H report form, there are 7 sections to this form. You will have the same form for all age divisions. And again, that's our biggest change this year. These are not forms that build upon each other. These are forms that it's the same form for everybody. They request the same content for everybody, but the number of allowable entries vary. So you can only have so many for this age group and so many for this age group. And when we are talking about number of years, it is the current 4-H year, so that is the 2018-2019 4-H year, and up to 3 preceding calendar years, or 4-H years. You can include information from the current 4-H year plus up to 3 previous years on the report form. You'll only complete 1 report form each year that includes up to 4 years of information. You won't be creating 4 report forms with 1 year per form. Previous year's report forms should not be included. So if you have record book information from your past record books, it's best to take all of that out now and start fresh. Keep it in a safe place though, because you can use that for your future scholarship applications. All the forms are a fillable Word document, so you'll be able to download it in Microsoft Word and type it out. And the Texas 4-H report form is the main reporting form for the record book. This is where you'll put all your information for what you've done in 4-H, as well as school, church, and other community groups in their own section. The thing that judges are looking for is growth. And that is part of why they changed the record book forms to include multiple years on the same set of forms, is some judges were not going back and looking at the growth from year to year in past year's forms. This will allow it to be more of a 4 years at a glance or 3 years at a glance. That way the judges can see how that individual has changed and grown in their project, and they don't miss something that may be very important for that 4-H'er's 4-H career. So section 1 is the very first section of the 4-H project experiences. It is, what is your project? How did your project change or grow? What have you done and what have you learned? This can include any kind of learning experiences gained in other youth and community organizations, but are applicable to the 4-H project. So that would be something to the effect of maybe you went to a showmanship clinic for your FFA program. If you learned skills that you are able to use through your 4-H project, you can include that in there. What I would say is, instead of calling it a area or district FFA showmanship clinic, you could put in there beef showmanship clinic and learned different methods of showing my steer. That way you can include the information, you just don't include what it is actually from. You'll want to list all the cool things that you've done in 4-H this year. This is your chance to say, look at all the stuff that I've been doing. We teach in 4-H a lot of times, don't brag on yourself. Be humble in everything that you do. And that is still the case. But when it comes time for record book and for scholarship applications, that is your chance to brag about yourself and to tell the judges why your project is better than somebody else's. Why do you deserve that over another kid who had an equally good project? Okay, so it's one of the few contests we have where the competition is still only one goes on to the next level. Learning activities include things such as, but are not limited to, workshops, contests, tours, research that you've done, computer learning programs, etc. What I would say is things like research and computer programs are not, I repeat, are not considered national or international 4-H project experiences. Those are done at the local level from the safety of your home or library or school or something like that. So those kinds, reading a book is not, even though if it was published in Germany, it is not an international level experience. If you are doing a community service project and you want to include that you sent something, that your 4-H club collected shoes and sent them to someone in Africa, then that would be a club level experience. If your county did it, then that would be a county level experience. If you actually got up and went to the other country and did it, then we're talking about an international level experience. And that's with anything you do in 4-H, community service, leadership, or project related. Think about at what level that you did that work in. These learning activities may be completed in a project setting or are the result of an independently conducted project. So basically you are telling us, what did you learn? How did you learn it? What did you do to learn it? What were the things that you did? Okay. Learning experiences are those in which the 4-H member has been a participant and not a teacher or an instructor. If you taught something or you instructed something, that goes in your leadership section. That's section 2, and we'll talk about that in a second. Leadership and citizenship are also listed as projects, just like swine, beef, clothing, etc. Examples of leadership learning experiences might include things like learning about different leadership styles, how to work with people, effective communication, nonverbal communication, etc. So keep that in mind. A leadership project means that you've had training on how to be a better leader and different ways to become a better leader. So keep that in mind. Additionally, for Section 1, it is individual directed project learning experiences are also acceptable. So if you've done stuff on your own, you can include it. You can include up to 4 projects from the current year and up to 3 preceding years, and it's only up to 2 years for juniors. Okay, so if you're a junior, you can put 4 projects for the last 2 years. If you're intermediate, you can do 4 projects for the last 4 years, and then for seniors, it is 4 projects for the last 4 years as well. Juniors are limited to 2 pages, intermediates are limited to 3 pages, and seniors are given the opportunity to have 4 pages. So keep that in mind. They're trying to make it a little bit easier to where you can fit more stuff or as much information in there as possible. Section 2 is about your leadership experiences, whereas Section 1 is blank pages that you can format however you would like. Section 2 includes a table that includes information on what year you did it, the leadership activity, your role, the level, whether it be local, county, district, state, and then what were your responsibilities, duties, and accomplishments. Remember, everything that you do in 4-H is done at a level, whether it be the club level or up to the international level. The member needs to let other people know the level of participation by using codes such as CL for club, CO for county, D for district, S for state, N for national, and I for international. Leadership experiences are the most important things that tell us how the member has been involved in teaching and leading. Okay, so the report form provides you, or gives you 2 pages to be able to talk about this. The 4-H member should be able to demonstrate leadership in 4 different areas, which would be promotion, volunteer, elected, or appointed. So let's say you have a president of your club listed, and you also have 4-H ambassador listed for Guadalupe County. So of course, president of your club was an elected position. An ambassador is an appointed position because you are chosen from a group. And then if, let's say, you wore your 4-H t-shirt to school and you wanted to talk about that, that's an example of promotion leadership. If you were volunteered to be in charge of a group or to lead a discussion at your meeting, well, that's volunteer leadership. So make sure you distinguish between those types of leadership. List what you did to assist others. Include general leadership such as club officer, county council, or county committees. One thing they are not looking for this year is the number of people and hours that you spent on it. So they don't care as much about the number of people that you reached or the number of hours that you spent on it. Promotion leadership, well, we talked about that already. One moment, please. Do not include leadership that has occurred as part of performing a community service. So if you were in charge of a community service project, that would go in the community service section, not the leadership section. Providing primary leadership to community service efforts should be reported in Section 3, and it actually looks better in Section 3. For Section 2, you can include the current year and up to 3 preceding years, only up to 2 preceding years for juniors. For your entry and page limits, juniors are allowed 10 entries. So this is 10 entries over a maximum of 2 years. And it all goes on 1 page. Intermediates can list 15 entries over a maximum of 4 years and 1 page. So this is where you have to start trying to figure out what are your 15 best leadership experiences that you've had in the last 4 years. Seniors are limited to 25 entries, and it is limited to 2 pages. So that is fairly difficult to come up with, especially if you have been a very active 4-H'er, trying to come up with what your top 25, top 15, or top 10 leadership experiences have been over a 2 or 4 year period can be difficult. But keep in mind, when you get to the scholarship application for 4-H, that scholarship application will ask what have been your top leadership experiences over 10 years. What are your top 4 4-H awards? What are the top things that you've done in all your years of 4-H project for your top 4 projects? So this is trying to help prepare you for that eventuality when you get to apply for a 4-H scholarship. Section 3 is all about community service, and community service is the opportunity for you to go out and help other people. We do a lot of community service here in Guadalupe County, so it shouldn't be too difficult for you to find some information to put in this section. How do you know if what you've been doing is community service? Ask yourself, what did I do to help other people because of 4-H? Okay, so this should only be community service information or community service projects that you did within the scope of 4-H. If your FFA chapter has done a community service project, that would go in a different section, but it would not go in here. This is 4-H related only. Community service should be coded by the amount of community service, the number of people involved in the activity, and the number of people you impacted with the activity. There are 3 codes that reflect this. So one is why, for yourself. Did you do this project all by yourself with no help from other 4-Hers? Did you provide primary leadership? So that is, were you the one that planned and was in charge of it, but you had other people helping you? And then member of a group is when another 4-Her asks you to help, or if we have a major 4-H community service project on the county level, then that information would go under a member of a group. Note, this is about community service only and not citizenship experiences. Citizenship is its own project, so you'll have to look at that category for more details. So things like 4-H Day at the Capitol would not go in this section. 4-H Day at the Capitol would go under your leadership section. This would be more for community service that you may have done at Leadership Lab, or when we do One Day 4-H, or the District 10 project, collecting stuffed animals. All of that would go in this section 3. Again, it includes the current year and up to 3 preceding years. For juniors, you are limited to 10 community service entries on 1 page. Intermediates, you are limited to 15 entries on 1 page. And seniors are limited to 25 entries over 2 pages. And remember that this is over a 4-year period. So be sure that you put those years on there. Section 4 is about other 4-H projects that you were unable to include in Section 1. Section 4 should have something listed in it, so if you only have 3 or 4 projects, make sure you list some in Section 1 and at least 1 in Section 4. You can include your current year and up to 3 preceding years of activities. It can be any number of projects. So if you were involved in 10 projects outside of your top 4, you can include information in here. Just remember, it is limited to 1 page, and that is 1 page to cover projects over a 4-year span. So keep that in mind when you are filling out this section. You can list the information in this section much the way you list the information in Section 1, as it is all still project related. Section 5 is 4-H recognition and awards. You'll list the year, the level, what the type of recognition was, and then what its importance to you is. I always say this every year, that early on in my career we had somebody put blue corn muffins inside of their top 4 4-H experiences, and I knew it was second place blue corn muffins, and I couldn't figure out why he would list that over any number of other awards that he had also made. And he told me, when I asked him, he told me it was because that was the award that really got him interested in wanting to stay in 4-H. So be sure to list that importance to you. The judges want to see cool stories like that. Include current year and up to 3 preceding years. You can have 10 entries, 10 awards on 1 page for juniors, 15 entries on 1 page for intermediates, and up to 25 entries on 1 page for seniors. Be sure to list the level of the award that you got. Be sure to list the year that you got it. And my thought would be that you need to, all of these that ask for year, put them in order of descending year. So start with this year and then work to last year, the year prior, and the year prior. Section 6 is over your non-4-H activities. Everybody is limited to 1 page, And this is any kind of leadership, community service, awards, and recognition from other activities such as FFA, church, other community organizations, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Interact Club, National Honor Society, sports, all those kinds of things can go in here. Again, you can have the current year and 3 preceding years for seniors and intermediates, and 2 years for juniors. This shows that you're not just doing 4-H stuff, that you're more well-rounded. And in the Texas 4-H scholarship application, there is a section for outside 4-H experiences. So keep that in mind. Section 7 will be confusing to some, but it does serve a purpose. It is the college and career exploration page, and yes, juniors have to fill this out. There is research that suggests that the earlier you start thinking about what college and what career you're going to have, the more of a chance you are going to have of actually working towards that college and that career, or working towards a better life. So that is part of why that's included in here. List activities that have helped you learn more about careers or the necessary education to enter a career. This might include interviews, tours, job shadowing, research, mentoring, work experience, skill development, coursework, etc. The first thing it will ask you is, as of today, what career would you choose? If you are 8 years old and you want to be garbage man, then you can put that on there. And then tell us about what are those things that you've learned over the last year or done to help you learn about being a garbage man. You can include the current year and up to 3 preceding years for seniors and intermediates, and 2 years for juniors. You only need 10 entries for juniors on one page, 15 entries for intermediates on one page, and 15 entries for seniors on one page. It is all limited to one page, so it all has to be done on the same form. Keep in mind, when these forms are done, you will not want your information to bleed over on other pages because you don't want it to expand past your total amount of pages for that section. So, once you have your forms filled out, you're going to be asking yourself, what do judges look for? How's a record book judged? And what I would suggest, especially if you are a parent or a senior level 4-H'er, is volunteer to be a judge at county and at district. The best way to see how other people are putting together record books is to judge them. Judges will look for things on your project work, leadership, community service. They're going to look through all the information that are in those 7 sections based on the score sheet for the judging criteria. They'll be judged primarily on content, and the emphasis will be placed on the quality of the members' experiences, not just the quantity. So we want you to have a strong, robust 4-H project, and not just one where you're going to club meetings every month. When readers look at a record book, they take into account details in relation to how long a member has been in 4-H. Clarification on learning activities that take place outside 4-H clubs and project groups. Very often, 4-H members can enhance their project learning experiences by participating in activities beyond the typical 4-H club. For example, a 4-H'er may participate in a showmanship clinic sponsored by a cattle breed association. The learning that you get from that opportunity and the practice of showing transcends just that training and is something that you can use on your 4-H project. And so it should be reported in the project form. However, if you compete in a showmanship competition sponsored by the Breed Association, that would be reported as a non-4-H activity. So we've talked about that for a number of years, is if you are a member of Texas Cattle Raisers Association or TJLA or one of the horse riding associations or something like that, The learning that you get through those organizations can be reported, but the competitions and the contests cannot. If you showed 5 steers through Seguin FFA and 3 steers through Seguin 4-H, you could only talk about the 3 steers that you showed through 4-H, and then the others would have to be reported under the non-4-H section. Another example might be the theater and performance arts category, where many of your learning experiences may take place within a community theater or through school, through doing things like one-act play. The skills, knowledge, and practice associated with that can be reported as learning experiences. However, a competitive event or production would not be reported as a 4-H activity. So if you were in a play company does a version of Beauty and the Beast, all the training that you did for Beauty and the Beast, all the learning that you did for that play could be counted, but the actual show that you go and put on at a theater that people paid to go see would not be reported. Or if you're in one-act play and you are participated in lots of training and activities and things like that, all of that can be reported, but the actual competition through UIL cannot. So we try to give you a little latitude when it comes to your projects. We also have 4-H members that have self-led projects. You might be the only person in your club or your county with that project. They are included and reported the same way as any other project. One thing you may not have are competitions, especially if there's not a 4-H competition available. A good example of this is when I was growing up, my biggest interest was meteorology. So I led a meteorology project for Bexar County, and there was only 3 or 4 of us that were interested in it. So that was something that I did. I reported it one year, and then I found other projects that I could do different things in. But if that is part of your 4-H experience, include it. This is an example or a copy of the score sheet. So you can see that the 4-H story and photo portfolio is worth 30 points. And so you need to make sure that it has these things in there. Your personal and family background. That your projects and your goals are clearly outlined. That you have 4-H activity highlights and experiences. Leadership and citizenship highlights. What are your future plans and goals for 4-H? Make sure that you have quality, good-looking photos included, that it follows all the guidelines of number of pages and all that kind of stuff, and have somebody proofread your paper for grammar, punctuation, spelling, organization, etc. And then judged on the overall quality. And then you can see you get 20 points for Section 1, 15 points for Section 2, 15 points for Section 3, and then Sections 4 through 7 are all worth 5 points. And that is what we're looking for scores, or what the judges are looking for when they're scoring your record book. For your record book cover, all types of covers and binders are accepted. We have a supply of the regular green 4-H record book covers that we order from National 4-H Supply. They're $2, which is what they cost there. Sometimes it's just easier to buy them through us because you don't have to worry about shipping. There's also black vinyl ones that you can buy, but those are more expensive. So those you'll have to give us the money, and then we'll place them with an order. Both of which it's best to write on them with a marker, not a pen. So if you have a green record book cover, use a black marker. If you have a black cover, use a gold or silver paint marker. Those work really well. But you can use a braided folder and a number of things like that. So general guidelines about the record book. You are allowed to write your record book by hand. My suggestion to you would be never do that. It is hard to write that much information legibly. So I would type everything up on the word forms that you can use that are downloadable online. For grammar and punctuation, you are encouraged to write using proper grammar and punctuation. Please do not use abbreviations that you might use in text messaging or on Instagram or Snapchat or something like that. Remember who your judges are. They're usually older. They're my age and older. A lot of them may not know what some of those abbreviations mean, so use plain English. Report forms can be presented in a table or chart format. I would not, in the record book forms, we don't want to see it's simply narrative. We want to see tables. We want to see charts. We want it to be information that's easily digestible by the judge so they can make a good decision. If you're having to read through and pick out information through a paragraph, that's much harder to do. Make sure that your text margins on the top, bottom, and right, they have to be between 1/2 inch or 1 inch, and the left margin must be 1.5 inches. That way it can be hole punched and bound inside of a folder of some kind. Your paper type, you need typing paper or bond weight paper, are both acceptable. Do not paste typing paper onto construction paper. Do not use sheet protectors or dividers or anything like that. I would not use cardstock or construction paper or anything like that, because the more you open it and bend it and move it, the less sound it gets and it could fall out of your book. With creativity, your creativity is encouraged. So this is your, you can use backgrounds, decorative elements throughout the story and the photo portfolio. Construction paper cutouts, all those kinds of things. Your forms will not be on, there's not a whole lot of creativity you can use. You can use bold, underlined, and italicized words to highlight different things on your forms. If you want to color code your level of experience, you can do that as well. Or color code what are major experiences that are in your main project area, you can do that. But most of that should be black Times New Roman 10-point font minimum. And your font should be color or black fonts. Use a minimum of 10-point font, and we talked about that. Remember, if you are printing a book to be read as a printed book, then you need to use a serifed font like Times New Roman. That's a font that has one of the little feet down at the bottom of an A or a H or something like that. You'll see these little feet-looking things on the edges of the letter. That kind of font is designed to be read on paper. So those are the best fonts to use. Using a sans serif font like Arial or Verdana is acceptable, but those fonts are more designed to be read on a computer. So try to use a serifed font instead of a sans serif font. Some other changes to note for this year. Photography books include the same number of photos as other categories. So you can have extra form, or you can have extra pages with photos for photography. Your old report forms will not be included in any book. So this is your chance to start fresh. Now you can go and take information from your past record books and put it into this record book if you're trying to get to the proper amount of years. This will be time consuming, but since they judge you over multiple years, unless this is your first year in 4-H, you should make an attempt to try to do that if you want to be competitive at the county, district, and state level. There are also updated categories this year, so you will need to look at that new category list. Our categories for this year include agricultural sciences, beef, citizenship and civic education, dog care and training, so please note there is no more companion animal, it is dog care and training, consumer education, entomology, fashion and interior design, Also, please note that took the place of housing and home environment and clothing and textiles. So if you have a clothing project that you're wanting to report, it will be a fashion and interior design project from here on out. There's food and nutrition, gardening and horticulture, goat, health and personal safety, horse, leadership, natural resources, photography, plant and soil science, poultry, public speaking, rabbit, STEM, sheep, shooting sports, swine, theater and performing arts, and veterinary science. If you look at pages 16 through 19 of the 4-H Record Book Family Guide, you will see descriptions of each of those categories. If you're a senior 4-H member who happens to win in your record book category at state, you will be allowed to submit an additional record book in that category in the future. However, you will only be allowed to attend the Texas 4-H Leadership Conference once, which is being held during Thanksgiving break of each year. Even though you win and earn the right to go to that trip, it typically costs you between $1,250 to $1,500. We can help you with fundraising if you need it, as it comes time for you to get to pay for that trip. Again, this has been the 4-H Record Book Training for the 2018-2019 year. Appreciate you sitting down and listening. It's about an hour long, and so we've talked about a lot of things. If you're a senior, the changes have not been that extensive. For juniors and intermediates, it is a much bigger switch, but in the long run, it will allow for the judges to see a better picture of what you have done, how you have grown, and what you've learned in your 4-H project. If you have any questions, you can contact me at my email address listed there, or at the Extension office at 830-303-3889. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Guadalupe County 4-H. We will be having trainings in May, one in Shirt-Cibolo area and one in Seguin. So be looking for those dates in the May newsletter. Again, if you ever have any questions, please let me know. You're also welcome to come in and meet with me face-to-face here at the office. Thank you for your time and have a good day.